So supervised learning is when you have a machine learning model whose job is to make a prediction. So a good example in marketing is, let's say you want to have churn scores for customers. So you'd like to predict how likely on a scale of 0 to 100 is each customer to churn in some time horizon, like 6 months. And so you're going to set up a supervised model. The reason it's called supervised is because you would train the model on historical data of actual customers who churned or didn't churn. And so you have labels, ones and zeros. The customers with ones churned, the customers with zeros didn't churn. And so you give those labels and you use them to train. And so you think of those labels as supervising the education of this model, right? Your model sees the labels, that gives it the reality. And if it predicts something that doesn't correspond to a label, it gets a slap on the wrist. And if it predicts something that does correspond, good job. So you can think of these labels as supervising the training process of the model. Notably, supervised models like churn prediction, they don't make decisions. They don't tell you what to do. They don't take actions in the world. They make predictions. You can think of them, it's a model that sits in an armchair and it tells you, this customer will churn, this customer will churn. It doesn't do anything about it. It's a thinker, not a doer. And then you have another branch of machine learning called reinforcement learning, where here you had models whose job is to actually take actions. So you have a reinforcement learning model. Instead of telling it to predict something, you tell it, hey, here's a reward function that you want to maximize. So that reward function, you can think of it as like goodies that the model gets when it takes actions that lead to good outcomes. In the case of marketing, that could be conversions or revenue dollars, whatever. And then it has a set of actions it's allowed to take, and then it actually starts taking actions and getting goodies or anti-goodies, right? You can get negative goodies if you do bad things. And it's like training an animal. And what a reinforcement learning model is supposed to do is it's supposed to learn through its own trial and error what set of actions to take to maximize the total reward that it's achieving. Just like a puppy, if anyone's ever trained a puppy, it's the exact same analogy. And so in the research literature, reinforcement learning models have traditionally been called agents. And because that word underscores that distinction between a model whose job it is to just make some prediction and an entity that acts in the world and has some goal that it's pursuing and then takes actions to maximize its attainment of that goal. And so traditionally, that was the distinction. A model is something like a supervised model. An agent is a reinforcement learning model that actually takes actions to maximize something. And then more recently with large language models, the term agent has been also borrowed from the reinforcement learning literature to say a large language model who actually doesn't just output text, it also takes certain actions, like it browses the internet or it sends emails. And it's kind of specifically tuned and set up in order to take these actions instead of just purely outputting text and predicting what sort of text you'd have. And so it's a similar concept, but it's actually distinct, right? Reinforcement learning agents are not identical to large language model agents, but the terminology reflects the same idea and the same way of thinking about them.